Okay, great. Thank you so much, Naomi and Annabelle, for your work today to support this presentation. My name is Elena Joffre. I'm from Futures Without Violence. Good morning, everyone. And I'm a program director here at Futures. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with our health team at Futures Without Violence. We're very excited to be co-hosting today's webinar alongside Farmworker Justice. This webinar is titled Domestic Violence and the Impact of COVID-19 Pandemic on Farm Workers, a conversation with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas and Lideres Campesinas. A few notes before we begin. Please feel free to introduce yourself with your name and the organization you're associated with in the chat. This webinar is being recorded. And if you have any questions, please feel free to include your questions in the chat in either English or Spanish. And we hope to have questions at the end, time for questions at the end. Let me go to the next slide. So before we get started, I just wanted to mention one thing. This presentation, we'll be talking about COVID-19 pandemic and domestic violence. And we know that the pandemic has brought incredible challenges to our healthcare system, to the social safety net, to our food harvest supply chain. Healthcare workers, domestic violence service providers, farm workers, and the community leaders who work alongside farm worker communities, all of whom we'll be talking about and addressing in this presentation, have really been on the front lines of the pandemic. And as you all have been doing the essential work to respond to the pandemic, we know that many of you have also been touched personally by the coronavirus. So we just wanted to
Elena, I'm sorry, your sound is very difficult to hear right now. It sounds very muffled.
What about now, Annabelle?
That is perfect now.
Okay, great, thank you. And so we just wanted to add our voices to the chorus of thank yous and thank all of you for your work and the support you've been doing for your communities during this time. And it's a real privilege and an honor for us to be able to share this information and materials with you today. The next slide. We know that domestic violence is very prevalent. And so we assume always that there are survivors among us. As such, be aware of your reactions and take care of yourself first. Self-care is so important. It's okay to step away from the Zoom if you need to. We also ask that you respect patient and client confidentiality and do not use personal identifying information in your comments or questions. Next slide. Becca, I'll pass it to you to review our learning objectives.
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to focus on 3 learning objectives. The first is to improve access to healthcare and services for survivors for farm worker communities. The second is to explore collaborations between community-based organizations and community health centers in farm worker communities. And the third is to identify strategies developed by farm worker leaders to address the health and safety needs of farm worker communities. Next slide, please.
And then we also have, this project is being brought to you as part of our project here at Futures, Health Partners on Intimate Partner Violence and Exploitation, the new National Training and Technical Assistance Partner funded by the Human Resources and Services Administration Bureau of Primary Healthcare. Health Partners works with community health centers to support those at risk of or surviving intimate partner violence, human trafficking, and exploitation, and to bolster prevention efforts. And you can learn more about the project, Health Partners on Intimate Partner Violence and Exploitation, on the website listed on the slide, or email us at ipvhealthpartners@futureswithoutviolence.org.
Great, and Farmworker Justice is a nonprofit organization that seeks to empower migrant and seasonal farm workers to improve their living and working conditions, immigration status, health, occupational safety, and access to justice. This year, we'll be celebrating our 40th year since our founding. Next slide, please. Great, and today we have a great cast of presenters. We're fortunate to have with us very special guests from both Lideres Campesinas and Alianza Nacional. We'll be hearing today from Suget Lopez. She's the executive director of Lideres Campesinas, based in California, and she joined that organization 14 years ago. With her, we also will have Elvira Herrera. She's the daughter of a bracero and a former farm worker, and she came to the U.S. undocumented at 4 years old. She's a survivor of domestic violence and human trafficking. And over 5 years ago, she started at Lideres Campesinas as a member. We also have Yesenia Martinez, who is a victim advocate and organizer with Lideres Campesinas. She's the daughter of farm workers and a former farm worker herself. She joined Lideres in 2015. We also are fortunate to have Millie Trevino Sauceda. She's the executive director and co-founder of Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. And she's also known as the founder of the Farmworker women's movement in the US since the late 80s. We're very fortunate to have her here. And alongside her, we also have Maria de Luna. She's the National Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, based in Washington, D.C. She has personal ties to the farmworker movement, and those came from her family and their history of cultivating and harvesting the land. And I'm Rebecca Young. I'm from Farmworker Justice. I'm a senior project director, and I've been with FJ for 10 years now. And we have Elena, who you met at the beginning of the presentation.
So we wanted to take a moment to recognize the many farmworker leaders who have joined us today on this program from both Lideres Campesinas and the organizations associated with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, several of whom you'll be hearing from shortly. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you would like to. The work that our presenters will share with us today is part of a long history of farmworker women leadership on issues related to domestic violence, sexual assault, and farmworker women have worked both nationally and in community for decades to address domestic violence, sexual harassment, and sexual assault before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and we really wanted to honor that leadership and take this moment to recognize them. They've developed innovative outreach strategies, advocated for policies and resources for survivors in their communities, and we're honored to have the opportunity to highlight some of that work today. And I'll pass it over to Becca to talk about one such resource that Farmworker Justice has worked on with Lideres Campesinas.
Next slide, Myra. 2 years ago, we worked with Lideres Campesinas to develop a film called Breaking the Silence, Rompiendo el Silencio. And this was an effort that was born from conversations that we had with lots of communities throughout the United States, hearing about the increase in workplace violence that that farmworker women specifically were experiencing in the fields. So alongside the film, and it's a short film, we have that available on our YouTube channel. You can access that through our website. We also developed a companion photonovela and a discussion guide as well. That's really wonderful for provoking conversation around a really tough topic. And all of those materials can be found on our website. Next slide. And I think, so the COVID-19 impact on farm workers, that's been really extreme and difficult for so many communities across the states in these last 15 months. We've seen and heard so many stories from farm workers who are being disproportionately impacted in so many aspects of their personal lives and their work as well. And so some good examples of that are, and challenges as well that they face are in things like the field sanitation. And so in the fields when there are the actual availability for the bathroom and hand washing stations, farm workers already experience a number of challenges around those, including a great distance to get there and overcrowding of those facilities and a lack of those facilities as well. And so in the time of COVID-19, when the rest of the world is being really encouraged to wash their hands frequently, use soap, use sanitizer, we're seeing that those things aren't always, of course, available for the farm workers. And an added challenge around that, just in terms of having access, whether it be to the soap or the sanitizer, is the fact that sanitizer isn't as effective if there is a layer of dirt between your hand and that sanitizer. And of course, when you're working in the field, that's a very real challenge that farm workers would face. In terms of transportation, a lot of farm workers will have to be, in normal times, they're using shared rides, whether it is to get from their homes to the work site or between the work sites themselves. And typically that can happen in small vans, sometimes in buses. But again, that challenge around having everyone need to at least maintain that 6-foot parameter and distance between themselves and another worker, that's caused great challenges in terms of the transportation. For housing, the same thing as well. Many farm workers live in more crowded conditions. So whether they're living with multiple families in smaller houses or apartments, or in employer provided housing, that can cause challenges. And then when we're thinking about the impact of COVID-19 on domestic violence across communities, we've all heard many stories of how this has really increased for women, especially during this time, that were already suffering domestic violence or in some difficult relationships. And so some of those factors leading to that is because of the increased isolation that people were experiencing during this time, the high stress that
I think we may have, Rebecca's computer may have frozen. So I'm gonna jump in really quick and move us while Rebecca works on her computer. So just to finish Rebecca's point, increased isolation, stress, programs throughout the country have reported increased calls to their programs, to the national hotline related to domestic violence. And you'll hear from our presenters in a little bit about reports as well of coercive control and domestic violence impacting folks' access to resources, including healthcare resources and COVID-related resources such as the vaccine and testing. Next slide. So with that introduction, we'll pass it over to our first presenters at Lideres Campesinas to talk a little bit about the work that they've been doing in community here in California to support farm workers during the pandemic on issues related to COVID and domestic violence. And Suget, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Elena. Hi, everyone. My name is Suget Lopez, and I'm Lideres Campesinas Executive Director. Lideres Campesinas' mission is to strengthen the leadership of farm worker women so that united, we can be the agents of social, economic, and political change to ensure our human rights. Lideres Campesinas is a genuine community-based community organization that was originally founded from the Coachella Valley, and Millie, who's also here, is our founder of Lideres Campesinas, and along with many other Farmworker women that from the Coachella Valley, had this idea or understanding of the issues that they had in common, and also had this vision of doing something about these issues, not just sharing what they were going through, but also doing something like very hands-on about it. And that's what has characterized our movement for more than 30 years now. And next slide, please. We are the only statewide network of Farmworker women and girls in California. And here's a map that was nicely done, created by one of our members for one of our convenings in 2004. Showing the current locations of our chapters. We are located in the northern area, in the Sonoma-Napa area. This past year, because of COVID and our efforts to assist our community and work with our community, we've also began organizing in Yolo County in the Sacramento area. We are also present in the Central Coast from Monterey County all the way to Ventura, including northern Santa Barbara. Also located in the Central Valley in several sites, Merced, Madera, Fresno, Kern, and recently also Tulare began reorganizing in that area, and then down in the Coachella Valley. We also have one youth group, which is based in the Coachella Valley, and we're in the process of reorganizing our youth across the state as well. So lots of great work happening to ensure that the voices of the women and girls are heard, directly from them. And next slide, please. From early on, the issues that the women have shared or came to understand that, had in common had to do with environmental, related to their workplace, for example, pesticide exposure, also living in communities that are close by to the fields and experiencing firsthand the impact of the exposure to these pesticides, these chemicals. They have also come to experience the impact that it's having on their water, their drinking water, and then just their surroundings overall, their environmental conditions. Women have also shared labor conditions, issues with in the workplace, from wage theft to sexual harassment, sexual assault, and some of the other ones that were previously shared by Rebecca in her introduction. Violence against women, domestic violence, and sexual assault of minors, and also, sexual assault in the fields. It's been another issue that the women, have shared and have opened up over the years and have identified to have in common. And there's also issues with civic engagement, when it comes to, voting or meeting with elected officials and sharing, having access to those kinds of spaces where women can be heard directly. Sometimes the language could be an issue, the time, the hours in which these boards and commissions are meeting and hearing directly from the women are some issues identified by the women, and many more issues as well. Next slide, please. One thing that has characterized our organization since the beginning is the women having these spaces to talk, to share how, the different impacts and experiences that they have had over the years, but also to share with the public. Have helped through various ways, through media interviews like being shown in this slide. And can we move on to the next one, please? But also through theater skits organized by the same women, the development of these art pieces, like in this top photo here, shown with some of the women holding on to their sacks, where they express, in this case, their concerns around pesticide exposure, what they have learned, and the impact that pesticide exposure has had on their lives. In this image here, our members in the Ventura County are also in a meeting with back then he was a supervisor, the chair of the board of supervisors from their county, where they're helping educate our elected officials to the experiences that the women have in regards to pesticide exposure in the workplace and how it's impacted their lives and their health, and some ideas that they have in terms of alternative to pest management, and figuring out together how can existing legislation can be enforced to ensure their health and safety. And they do similar projects and campaigns and interactions on the various other issues, sexual harassment, sexual assault, domestic violence, and you know, they help not only bring visibility to these issues, but also it's a way of them showing, you know, and expressing about some solutions and how they like to be part of the solution. Here too, you see the kinds of outreach that is being conducted by our members, Farmworker women getting training and learning about their rights, and being able to show their ideas and express their ideas on these various issues to the community. Down here, they're at the health fair and an informational booth, interacting directly with the community. And the middle bottom photo, they're at a food distribution, a food bank, you know, where they're interacting again with members of our community. And all of this has continued to happen during the pandemic. Of course, you know, taking precautions, observing our distance, utilizing our masks, using more and more social media and Zoom, for example, to continue to have these meetings. We have also learned to use a lot of visuals, as you see here in this poster to the right, which shows some images, and our brochures that have been developed with the ideas and the creativity of our members, you know, who are very good at drawing and giving us feedback as to how much information written information to include versus, you know, visuals, images, and all of this to ensure that we're able to connect in a meaningful way with members of our community. Mainly in California, our farm workers speak Spanish, but we do have a growing community of indigenous communities who speak other languages other than Spanish. And so this is why we've developed these, you know, had these collaborations with Farmworker Justice, for example, and these radionovelas, fotonovelas for sexual harassment, sexual assault in Spanish and Mixteco. Same thing with when it comes to recently we just completed one on COVID and vaccination and getting tested, also in Spanish and Mixteco, where our members are able to give their input, their feedback on the developed script that ends up being shown on these videos. So the interaction with our members, I think that is one of the key things. Can we go to the next slide, please? One of the key aspects of our work that makes it effective and efficient, can we go to the next slide, please, is the way that our members speak up and are able to share. In this case, a year ago, at the onset of the pandemic, we had this opportunity to talk to farm workers as usual and gather, you know, found common trends on what were they were mostly concerned about. And may we move to the next slide, please? There were 8 different aspects that were brought up during these conversations, and we decided to put them in writing and to address this letter to our governor and to the First Lady. And this opened up a series of conversations with various other stakeholders, including community health centers, because one of the first things that our farm workers share with us is that they would love to see health professionals conduct COVID-19 orientations in the fields, because that's where they would normally be spending their time. Farm workers are essential workers, and so they were required to continue to work during the pandemic. And they were just not seeing how in the fields they were getting appropriate information. You know, sometimes supervisors would be joking about the pandemic, and you know, farm workers, you know, said and shared that they would appreciate having professionals, you know, come to the fields and share and help them understand what was happening and how they could be safe and protected while working in the fields. And there was a series of other recommendations that if you go onto our website, you can find a copy of the letter addressing some of the other needs and challenges that farm workers help, you know, share their own voices through conversations and testimonies, and that we were able to capture, and that are available on our website, on our YouTube channel, including this letter. May we go to the next slides, please? And so one of the issues that Farmworker women shared with us at the onset is, and our victim advocates who are going to be presenting next were able to perceive or to see, is the increase of violence against women, which is what we're addressing here on this concern number 8, crisis within a crisis. Our victim advocates are going to share now what are some of the challenges that they began to realize or to notice, some of the trends at the onset, and what have we been doing, about that, and working with our members. That's just one thing that I would like to share, just to conclude this overview of how we work and how we've continued to work, is the value and the importance of working with our farm worker community, understanding that yes, there are multiple issues that our community is facing and has faced over the years: immigration, work-related, environmental, etc., and how all these interconnect and impact. It is really difficult to just focus on addressing one issue while ignoring the other aspects. Understanding, this situation and how all these things, issues interact with each other and impact the lives of the people that we work to service, is really crucial in working with our community. And also understanding that our community, despite these adversities and these situations and issues, they have a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, talent, courage that should be tapped into. Working directly with these with the community that we're servicing is crucial, is important as we design the way we're working and servicing. When we give ourselves permission to interact with community-based organizations and the people from our communities, we will grow and ensure that we are servicing in the most effective way, having this collaboration. And in the process, everybody is growing. I've seen our members truly enjoy partnerships with community health centers, which is pretty much what happened as a result of recommendation number 1. We were able to partner very early on with community health centers to bring very much needed information at the beginning of this information. And over time, it was COVID testing, vaccinations, and many other services that are very important and crucial. And all of this directly into the fields. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were told in partnerships that it was going to be hard to accomplish something like that. And nonetheless, we were able to make it happen, and it's grown. It's taken partnership with the growers, with the departments of public health, with health centers and many other stakeholders. But it's possible. We did it. We accomplished it this past year, and our hope is that these partnerships will continue beyond this pandemic. And I'd like to pass on the word to Yesenia, who will be sharing stories from the fields. And may we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. This is just showing images of the kind of work that we've been doing, from bringing PPE directly into the fields to the information straight into the fields. And thank you. And there you go. Thank you. Adelante, Yesenia.
Oh, hi all, I am Yesenia Martinez with Lideres Campesinas, a victim advocate. I'm gonna go ahead and share a little bit of my experience and some challenges we face here in my community. Some of the challenges we face here in Kern are that we don't have many resources to help our women out. We work with farm worker women, and every day we see the need. During the pandemics, stress, fear, anxiety, and depression rates went up dramatically, making many couples into disagreements and fights. Some ladies were laid off, and the majority of our women are essential farm worker. They leave home to work at 5 a.m. and they come back home with their family from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., depending how far they work. And if you're undocumented, there's not many help out here. To attend an appointment, they either have to get off early or they have to miss work. Another challenge is the fear victims have and they don't want to report. In many cases, they choose to stay with the abuser, hoping things will change. During COVID and a year after, I continue receiving many calls of victims seeking for help. I am very grateful with the partnership we have with the agencies for their support and for partnering with us. Working and navigating the system can be very challenging, but we will continue supporting victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and building trust. Thank you for being here with us today, and I will go ahead and pass it on to my coworker, Elvira Herrera.
Thank you, Yesenia. Hi, everyone. My name is Elvira Herrera, and I'm an advocate for domestic violence, and I'm in the Indio Coachella side of, where my coworkers are. And here are challenges, our experiences out in the fields that we have witnessed ourselves, hearing it from them ourselves. It's been very hard since all this started. One of the big challenges has been, where to go for assistance for the domestic violence part of it. Some of my cases that I had or have at the first month has been women that lost their jobs. Now the husband is working and them coming home frustrated. And now they take it on them. I had one client that her husband literally broke her fingers, and she had no way to call anyone because he would disconnect the internet. And so this is just the stories of that we've been hearing from women, but being out in the fields when we're giving or assisting with the coronavirus shots has been women that have disclosed what they're going through at home. And to them, their part of the story is that when the husband is working, that's their time that they feel free. They feel safe because when they're home, they feel stressed out, or they have to watch every little step they take, or taking care of the kids, not to make any noise. So it has brought more tension to them and stress, which this caused a lot of these women to fall into depressions as well. And another thing that I witnessed as well being out there is that how men are still controlling their wives' health decisions. A lot of these women were not allowed to take the coronavirus test or the shot because, and me hearing it personally from the men telling me straight out, no, she's not going to take it because I'm the one that works. As long as I'm healthy. So this is something that really bothered me because again, we have men choosing their, the woman's health part of it, right? Or if you're not going to take the shot because you're not going to be able to have any children in the future, and I want more kids, and even the wife telling them, I don't want to have any more kids. Again, choosing, over their body. How many children you're going to give me? So this is just things, that we've been hearing. But the sad part of it, here where I'm at, we only have one shelter. And this calls, when they come in, it's hard for us to find them places. We have to work with different agencies to get them into hotels. And they get frustrated. So some of these women go back because they don't have nowhere to go. Here, the numbers that I have called several places, is 60% the abuse, sexual abuse on children have gone up. That's a percentage that I have right now. 90% is the domestic violence, and 120% calls to the shelters seeking to find a safe place for them. And 85% calls to the police department. And that's just not mentioning the part of other women that don't call because they're afraid, either because a husband tells you're going to be deported. So this is a lot of things, that women feel like, if I leave, where am I going to go? How am I going to eat? I called one of our local food banks, 400 domestic violence cases that the women had called, disclosed that this is what they're going. And this is just from it started to now. So we've been working very close here with the sheriff department with these cases, going to court, getting restraining orders. Thank God now the shelters are opening, so it'll be more easy for us to help them more on that side. But we also work along with another agency that is helping us with the sexual assault part of it for counseling. But again, this is something that it's just gotten worse. And, you know, good thing like my coworkers are saying, you know, we work along with so many agencies. I'm trying to find a solution to all this. And hopefully one day we will have more shelters where, you know, and be more prepared. Again, for whenever something like this happened again, we thought about everything, but honestly, it's like I told the mayor here in Coachella, we thought of everything, but nobody thought where we're gonna place women and children when they're going through domestic violence during this time. So hopefully all together we could, you know, work together on this and find a solution to, you know, not wait for something like this to happen again, to find where we're going to put women and children. And, you know, I'm glad that we're able to connect with different agencies to help out in these situations. And the courts are opening again as well. So that's kind of like, you know, a big challenge. But again, we're finding solutions, and we try to find solutions for what's going on and what's happening to these women and children. Thank you for being here and listening to the stories that are very important that, you know, sometimes we don't hear it. We don't hear it, but it's very important. You know, thank you all for coming and hearing all these stories and solutions as well that we're trying to find. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elvira and Suget and Yesenia for joining us in that important information. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to Millie next from Alianza Nacional to share with us some of her experiences.
Hola, Rebecca, thank you. Millie Treviño Sauceda with Alianza, and my presentation is basically part of it. We have Maria de Luna that both of us together will share a little bit about what we have been doing. Alianza Nacional de Campesinas is it's a farmworker women's movement. It's not just an organization. It's we have 15 different organizations, groups, and Lideres Campesinas being the pioneer organization that helped us organize Farmworker women. Yes, we started here in the Coachella Valley where I live in California. And the idea was we met Farmworker Justice in the early 90s, and we made a commitment together to make sure that we organize Farmworker women throughout the state, not only the state, but the nation. Why? Because we had already been doing a lot of great work in the Valley where if people, especially in terms of legislators or people that are public officials, were not paying attention to our needs, we felt it was important that we get people that were going to be responding to our needs, not just the needs of farm workers, but the needs of our communities, immigrant communities, people of color, etc. So throughout the time, we ended up organizing the Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, which means Farmworker Women's Alliance. And our mission is to unify the struggle to promote women farmworkers' leadership in a national movement to create broader visibility and advocate for changes that ensure their human rights. All these organizations were in 11 different states. Actually, I say 11, but we're in more. Let's do the next slide. Why? Because we have organizations within our movement that are national also and binational. And so we cover a lot of areas. And then we don't have the membership yet because we decided to stop including more membership until we develop a very strong infrastructure. It is the first national women farmworkers organization that was created, and it's by Pharmaco women and for Pharmaco women. The same thing. We have we're modeling a lot of what Lideres Campesinas is doing locally. And why? Because throughout the years, that was in 1991 when we made the commitment to organize Pharmaco women nationally. And then we said, okay, we'll do it, but let's organize Californianas, Pharmaco women in California. And with that, by 20 years later, we had already met a lot of organizations. You can go ahead, please, the next one. A lot of organizations that had been involved in doing a lot of the work that's been mentioned here, but they wanted to model and follow what Lideres Campesinas was doing, and we couldn't build a national network because the intention of Lideres Campesinas was to do statewide work, which is doing amazing work. Even actually, when I stepped down from being the director, and then Suget took over after a little bit, I think they're doing magnificent work. I'm very proud of that. And so we have women from different parts and more in states that are more, there's more farmworkers, like here, California, Arizona, Florida, upstate New York, Indiana, Washington State, and Oregon. And we know that there's interest from women from other states, which will be joining. If it's not by the end of the year, these groups will join by the beginning of next year. Next. The next slide, please. So some of the issues that we will be talking about real quick are related to violence against women. And we wanted to show some pictures of how in different ways, it's not just a bandana that they use to cover their face, it's that they use many other, like I remember when I worked in the fields, I used long sleeves with big shirts. Why? Because big shirts with the long sleeves. And why? Because it was a way that we could cover our bodies, a way that we could not only, we were not only concerned about the dust or the sun or the pesticides, but also all the harassment that was going through. So anyway, so going ahead, next, next slide, please. In terms of, these are pictures of just Pharmaco women. Yes, in order for us to do and be very, very effective, we followed the model that Lideres Campesinas has been organizing, and this is organizing gatherings with Pharmaco women. Here in California, that has been done, and we started doing the same with women throughout the nation. Why? Because in order for us to respond to the issues, we needed to hear directly from the women themselves. Even though some of us are Pharmaco women, we just really are not living the situation that campesinos are living in the actual times. Now, Maria, can you join us right now and start talking about, we did create 4 priority areas based on the recommendations. The women didn't only talk about in the convenings about what were the challenges, the issues, the problems, but also what their organizations with them involved is how we actually do our work responding, but also we got a lot of recommendations from them. And the 4 priority areas are related to violence against women, the pesticides, the environmental issues, because of their reproductive health and many other issues that go ahead in terms of their children, and also the labor issues and immigration. And there's many other issues that the organizations also get involved, but Alianza had the commitment in terms of working with this. Maria, can you help us, please? Next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Millie. So as Millie mentioned, these 4 priorities were based on the recommendations from women who have convened with us from years prior. And so I just want to mention them briefly in greater detail. Part of our work is to really advance a progressive campesina agenda that addresses the multiple issues that campesinas face, which is violence against women and girls, including domestic violence, sexual harassment and assault in the workplace, gender discrimination and sexual abuse of minors, pesticides, which includes worker protection standards and sustainable agricultural practices, immigration, right? Really working towards, advancing comprehensive immigration reform and extending legal protections for survivors of gender-based violence and other forms of abuses. And lastly, labor rights, really concerned with the health and safety of workers, labor and employment standards, and equal pay and treatment of workers. And so, all of these things were things that we addressed during our last convening, which happened, this past April, which provided a space for campesinas to really be able to share their needs and concerns, to learn from one another during the workshops and trainings that we had, and to really come to agreements, to strategize about the future of our work. And part of that work was also addressing how do we build back better from the pandemic. As our colleagues from Lideres Campesinas have mentioned, farm worker women have been facing multiple, often overlapping crises during COVID-19. Which includes, the increase of domestic violence and assault. And that is something that we actually brought to members of Congress during the convening. We had, legislative visits with over 50 members of Congress, which included congressional leaders, in which campesinas were able to directly provide recommendations, right? What does it mean to build back better, taking in mind the needs and concerns of campesinas and their families? And so with that in mind, I turn it back to Millie to really talk about, what other work we're doing sort of at this intersection between COVID-19, domestic violence, and the many other issues that impact farm workers.
Yes, I'll just do one more minute of information. We have, as I've been saying, we do have lots of actions that we do, but we plan with the women. We believe very, very strongly this is a movement where it's not about just supporting survivors, it's about engaging them. The same way, and most of the women have shared with us that the same way they get the support and for them to decide what they want to do with their lives or feel in terms of getting involved, we make sure that we plan and we provide training so that we can organize the actions whatsoever. And we do this with the groups that are haven't built their capacity, but the organizations like Lideres Campesinas has also been, with their expertise, have helped us provide a lot of the trainings. Go ahead, next. We also present theatrical skits. We also present, we go to the Capitol. We do because we've been modeling what Lideres Campesinas has been doing here in California. We've taken a lot of the projects to the different organizations throughout the nation, and believe me, it's working very, very well. Next. And why? Because the women are so into. And we've taken this, the same thing in terms of doing the projects and the way we do is we don't do just a presentation. We engage the community to have the conversations in different ways. We present teatro in vignettes, and in between the vignettes, we ask people what they saw. And we open that kind of conversation so that people don't have to build the trust. People don't have to talk about their issues. They can talk about what they see in the teatro. And that opens more of a dialogue. Next. And the same thing, it's with our exhibits, ¿verdad? And of course, because of COVID-19, we've done a lot of responses in terms of making sure that because we knew that companies were not providing, the government was not providing the support, we were seen as essential workers, but we were not treated as essential workers since the beginning. I mean, it's the first time ever in whole history that we've been called essential. Nonetheless, we've not treated as essential, and the stimulus is a very good example of that. The lack for that, a lack of PPE, a lack of many other things. So next, and so we make sure that the centers go directly to the fields, that the food banks go to the fields, that it's not necessarily oh, come to us. No, we go to them. Why? Because, and then engage the same Pharmaco community to help out. It's not about, oh, here we are saving you. It's about, let's get engaged. Next. We've been doing this for some time. So this, I think this is kind of the last ones, but there's different actions that we have done on all of this. The next one is kind of the last one. Yes, different kinds of work. And the last one is thanking everybody for having us here. Thank you.
I would like to thank Millie and all our presenters from Alianza and Lideres Campesinas. I am Mayra Ryder. I'm Health Programs Coordinator with Farmworker Justice. And we are going to share some resources with you, but before we go there, I would like to let everyone know we have an evaluation survey that will allow us to gather your feedback on this webinar, and that will help us tailor our future offerings. We are going to drop that link in the chat very soon for you. We would like to ask that everyone please take a minute or two to fill out that short survey. So we have some resources that we're going to share with you. Farmworker Justice has created a page of COVID-19 resources on our website that has links that are useful to farm workers, farm worker service organizations, and others. You will find links to COVID-19 guidance, regulations, and just educational resources on COVID-19. Our website also has a page dedicated to breaking the silence, which Becca shared earlier, where you will find the film, the trailer, and all the training materials. And now I will hand it over to Elena, who is going to discuss some of the resources that Futures has available.
Hi, everyone. And just to mention really quickly, if you're interested in more information on this intersection of domestic violence and COVID-19, and specifically looking at resources that can support work at domestic violence programs and community health centers, we invite you to check out our website at ipvhealthpartners.org, where there are a series of toolkits and videos, training that might also be able to support you in your work. Next slide. We also just wanted to mention that we do have an upcoming learning collaborative specifically for community health centers, looking at strengthening responses for farm workers on intimate partner violence and human trafficking during COVID. And one of the things that we'll be specifically looking at during the learning collaborative is inviting some feedback on some resources that Futures is building right now with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, looking specifically at this intersection between COVID-19 and domestic violence. And if you're interested in participating in the learning collaborative for community health centers, the website link is listed in the chat and on the slide, and invite you to register by June 11th of this month. Next slide. And I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Great. So I know that we are at about 2 o'clock, but we're happy to hang out on the line for a few more minutes. And please let us know if you have any questions. You can go ahead and chat those into the chat box or into the Q&A. We do have one quick question here in the Q&A, just about wondering if everyone can have access to the PowerPoint. And so, Myra, I'm just going to field that to you. Will we be sending that out after, or I know that we have anticipation of putting up the recording after?
Yes, we will share the PowerPoint with all the attendees, and you will be able to click on the links and link to the resources.
Great, thanks, Myra. And it looks like Cindy Mondoy has her hand raised. Cindy, if you want to unmute yourself, you can just go ahead and ask your question.
You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering, I'm from Central Oregon, and just wondering, we at Saving Grace, we haven't yet, done a lot with the farm workers, but I wanted to, and just kind of wondering what would be a good way to start, getting into more. There's a lot of field farm workers, and knowing there's a lot of need there, especially in watching this really good webinar. So just wondering if you had any suggestions on how to start the ball on that.
Sure, I think we could ask Suget and Millie and turn that over to them maybe.
Cindy, in my case, what I can say is that we can, you can try to get a hold of Alianza, or locally in Oregon, we have two of our member organizations, and they are PECUN and Mujeres Luchadoras Progresistas. And if they need our help, they can also connect with us. I mean, we're in constant connection with them. Because of COVID, we were able to do bi-weekly meetings to know what's going on, and some of the issues on violence against women has come up several times, many times, more than what we thought. So, and in that area also. So if you want to get a hold of us, please send us an email to Alianza Nacional de Campesinas @gmail.com, and believe me, and just say attention Millie, and we can see what we can do to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Again, please feel free to unmute yourself or type right into the chat box. We'll give a couple more minutes.
If there is anyone who would like to speak, you can press the raise hand button, and that will enable us to help you unmute your microphone.
Thanks for that clarification.
Rebecca and Myra, maybe we'll just take this minute I want to just thank all of our presenters, both for your generosity in giving your time today to share your work with us, but also for the amazing work that you're doing here in California and across the country. And we're just really grateful for you all to be able to come here and share your wisdom and thoughts with us. And thank you to everyone who was able to join, and look forward to hearing from you all soon with questions and or participating in upcoming events that Farmworker Justice and Futures will have hopefully in the future. Thank you so much.